They laughed when the name Earth appeared on the council's living wall. Not loud laughter, not the kind meant for joy. It was thin, sharp amusement, shared between beings who had ruled stars for so long that fear had become a forgotten skill. The council chamber floated above a gas giant, the color of rusted blood, its gravity carefully tuned to the comfort of its members, soft, controlled, safe. Every species present had shaped its worlds to remove pain, remove struggle, remove death, wherever possible. And then there was Earth. A blue and green sphere catalogued long ago and dismissed just as quickly. High gravity, unstable climate, tectonic violence, unpredictable seasons, native megafauna that hunted for sport, microorganisms that killed without intent, oceans that crushed metal, deserts that cooked flesh, storms that erased cities. A death world. The council had mocked it for centuries. Frontier species they called humans. A short-lived experiment of evolution that somehow had not yet collapsed. The broadcast showed crude machines, chemical rockets, loud combustion engines. They still used kinetic weapons. They still fought wars over land and belief. They still died by the millions to weather and hunger and disease. No sane species would come from such a place and matter. That was the belief. The mockery ended the day humans stepped onto Caraxes 9. Caraxes 9 was not meant to be difficult. It was a marginal world, recently claimed by the Council as a demonstration site for cooperative expansion. Low gravity, stable orbit, predictable climate cycles. Apex predators long extinct due to atmospheric shifts, native life soft, slow, harmless. Even its storms followed charts. ISO. The Council called it a weak world. It was supposed to be a lesson, a place where younger species could learn colonization without risk, a controlled frontier where nothing fought back. That was why the Council allowed humans to land there. They expected failure. They sent observers, not medics. Analysts, not soldiers. Cameras, not warnings. The humans were given limited supplies and a polite briefing. Council representatives spoke slowly, assuming limited comprehension. They explained the mild gravity difference, the thin atmospheric toxins that required simple filters, the docile wildlife. The lead council envoy even smiled, a gesture carefully studied from human recordings. "You will find this world forgiving," the envoy said. "Your survival odds are acceptable." Acceptable. The human commander did not smile back. Her name was never properly recorded by the council at first. Their system struggled with human naming conventions. She was simply marked as human-led unit. Medium height, dense bone structure, scar tissue visible even through protective gear, heart rate elevated but steady. She listened. She nodded. She asked practical questions about soil stability, microbial unknowns, and storm variants. Questions that suggested experience. The council found that amusing. When the humans disembarked, the first thing the observers noticed was how they moved. They did not float or glide like low-gravity species. They did not bounce like those evolved for light worlds. They walked with weight, every step controlled, muscles compensating automatically, balance maintained without thought. The gravity of Caraxes 9 was lower than Earth's by nearly 30%. For most species, it caused disorientation. For humans, it felt like relief. The first human laughed when he jumped and landed too far, not in joy. In surprise, he adjusted immediately. They adapted in minutes. The council logs noted this with mild curiosity. Then the ground shifted. A fault line beneath the landing zone released stored pressure. Nothing catastrophic by council standards. A shallow quake. Enough to knock over light structures. Human structures did not fall. They bent. They flexed. Anchors driven deep into the soil held. Humans shouted warnings to one another before the sensors even finished calculating tremor vectors. When the quake ended, the humans were already repairing. No panic, no confusion, just action. Alien observers exchanged glances. This was unexpected, but still amusing. Luck, they decided. On the third local day, the predators arrived. Caraxes 9 had not been fully mapped. A burrowing species, long thought extinct, emerged from beneath the plains. Six-limbed, armored, drawn by vibration. They attacked the perimeter at night, when most species would be vulnerable. Humans were awake. They had posted watches. They had layered defenses. The first predator died screaming, pierced by kinetic fire that shattered its armor through raw force. The sound echoed across the plains, primal and violent. Other predators hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. By morning, the perimeter was clear. The council expected panic reports, evacuation requests, pleas for assistance. Instead, the human commander filed a calm update. Indigenous hostile life confirmed. Threat manageable. Adjusting patrol rotations. Manageable. The word lingered in the chamber. Council scientists began rewatching the footage, slowing it down, studying human reactions. Elevated adrenaline? Yes. Fear responses present. But fear did not control behavior. Fear sharpened it. They realized then that humans did not come from a world where safety was assumed. They came from a world where survival was earned daily. The weak world began to change. Storms intensified beyond projections. A seasonal shift accelerated, bringing freezing nights that the council models had marked as impossible. Crops failed in soil thought ideal. Native microbes began attacking off-world biologies. Several council species monitoring from orbit fell ill. The humans did not. They sealed habitats, they altered diets, they burned contaminated fields, and started again. They lost people. They mourned briefly. Then they continued. Every solution they used was imperfect, ugly, brutal, effective. The council stopped laughing. An emergency session was called when Carax's 9 star flared unexpectedly. Radiation levels spiked, shielding 4 orbital stations faltered. Several council ships withdrew. The humans stayed. Their shelters were reinforced. Their bodies tolerated radiation levels that would have crippled other species. Cancer markers rose. They logged it. They adjusted exposure limits. They accepted the cost. Human endurance was no longer theoretical. It was visible. Council members began to feel something unfamiliar, unease. The weakest world was breaking their rules, and the humans were thriving inside the chaos. One observer finally voiced the question no one wanted to ask. If they come from worse than this, the observer said, what does that make their home? Silence followed. The council databases were reopened. Earth's files pulled from archival neglect. Data points once dismissed now formed a pattern too clear to ignore. Earth was not an anomaly that survived by chance. It was a forge. High gravity that crushed the weak. Predators that punished hesitation. Diseases that evolved faster than cures. Climate that demanded constant adaptation. A world that never apologized for existing. Humans had not conquered Earth. They had endured it. Endurance had shaped them into something the council did not understand until it was too late. On the 7th local night, long-range sensors detected movement beyond the known perimeter. Not predators, not storms, something else. The human commander stood outside the main shelter, helmet off, feeling the lighter gravity beneath her boots. She stared at the dark horizon where sensors showed nothing, and instinct screamed everything. She ordered all units to readiness, without explanation. In orbit, the council observers watched in growing dread as the humans prepared for something the instruments could not yet see. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council realized the mistake was not letting humans onto a weak world. The mistake was assuming that weakness was ever a measure of danger. The sensors finally spoke, but not in numbers the council understood. They screamed in human language. Not literally, but close enough that the alien technicians flinched. The readouts spiked and collapsed in patterns that did not match storms, tectonics, or wildlife. The algorithms hesitated. Human-built ones would have trusted the unease and acted. Council systems demanded confirmation. On the ground, the humans did not wait. The commander moved first. A raised fist. Sharp signal. People who had been resting were awake instantly. Weapons were checked. Power cells seated. Shelter doors sealed without debate. No one asked what was coming. They trusted the signal. Alien observers watched this with growing discomfort. Most species needed explanation. Humans needed intent. The darkness beyond the perimeter felt wrong. Not loud, not violent. Just empty in a way that pressed against instinct. Even the predators had gone silent. The commander remembered Earth, not as a place of beauty, though it had been that too, but as a place that punished assumptions. She had grown up under a sky that could turn deadly without warning. Storms that flattened towns, heat that killed crops, cold that stole breath. Animals that saw humans as prey, other humans who could be worse. Earth never promised safety. That was the lesson every human carried, whether they knew it or not. The Council had never understood that. They had seen humanity's wars and assumed aggression. They had seen human technology and assumed desperation. They had seen death tolls and assumed failure. They had never understood the environment that shaped those choices. Earth's gravity alone had forged humans into dense, durable beings. Bones thick enough to resist fracture. Muscles tuned to constant strain. Hearts trained to push blood uphill every second of every life. Even rest required effort. On Earth, standing still was work. Add predators that hunted in packs, insects that poisoned without malice, bacteria that evolved faster than medicine, and a climate that changed its mind every year. Humans did not evolve to dominate. They evolved to endure. The Council had removed danger from their worlds over millennia. They had smoothed mountains, calmed oceans, softened weather. Their children grew up without fear. Their adults had never known hunger. They believed this was progress. Humans believed survival was progress. First contact war, long before spaceflight, had been against nature itself. Fire against darkness, shelter against storm, cooperation against extinction. Humans learned quickly that no single trait saved them. It was adaptation that mattered. On Caraxes 9, adaptation was already underway. The strange movement beyond the perimeter finally revealed itself as shapes bending the air. Not cloaked exactly, it's more like refusing to be noticed. Creatures evolved to avoid attention rather than confront it, species the Council had never catalogued. That alone was enough to cause panic in orbit. Unregistered life meant uncontrolled variables. Uncontrolled variables meant risk. The Council debated withdrawal. The humans did not. The creatures crossed into sensor range. Tall, thin, jointed limbs that bent the wrong way. Skin that reflected the stars rather than the ground. Eyes that caught light without shining. Predators, but not in the simple sense. Hunters of opportunity. They tested the perimeter with cautious steps, not rushing, watching. The humans watched back. No shots were fired. That restraint surprised the observers most of all. The Council had expected humans to react with violence. Instead, they waited, reading behavior, looking for patterns. That too was learned on Earth. Predators, they're punished mistakes. Charge too early, and you wasted energy. Wait too long, and you died. Humans learned to read intent in posture, breath, and silence. The creatures shifted when a human shifted. They stopped when the humans stopped. A standoff formed under an alien sky. Then one creature stepped forward and spoke. Not in sound. In pressure, the sensation hit the human line like a sudden headache. Thoughts blurred. Balance wavered. A mental push that demanded submission without words. Several humans dropped to one knee, not in surrender, in pain. The commander did not. She had felt this before. It's not from aliens, but from Earth itself. From panic. It's from fear, so sharp it tried to shut the mind down. She forced her breathing steady, grounded herself in gravity, lighter than home but still real. Oh, she raised her hand again. The humans responded by anchoring themselves. Hands on solid ground, bodies braced, minds focused outward rather than inward. The pressure broke, the creatures recoiled. That reaction sent shock through the Council chamber. Psychic dominance was a rare ability, feared and respected. Entire species had surrendered without a fight when faced with it. Humans resisted it through sheer will, not immunity, endurance. The commander spoke, her voice carried by translators that barely kept up. "This is human territory," she said. "We are not prey." The creatures hesitated. That hesitation was everything. They withdrew into the dark without a sound. No victory cheers followed, no celebration. The humans knew better than to assume an ending. They reinforced defenses instead. In orbit, the Council sat in stunned silence. Fear began to spread, slow and quiet. Not fear of human weapons, fear of human resilience. Council historians pulled deeper records. Earth's extinction events, ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts. Humanity had survived all of them, scarred, reduced, but never erased. Every time the world tried to kill them, humans changed. The council had assumed that meant humans were fragile, always on the edge of collapse. They had misunderstood. Humans lived on the edge because they were strongest there. A junior council member finally asked what many were thinking. If they endure so much, they said, why are they not conquering everything? The answer came not from a philosopher, but from a biologist. Because endurance does not require conquest, the biologist said. It requires restraint. On the surface, the human commander reviewed reports. Injuries were treated, stress levels logged. No one was removed from duty unless absolutely necessary. Sleep was rationed. Food carefully allocated. This too came from Earth. Humans had learned that comfort was temporary, but discipline lasted. The commander looked toward the horizon again. The creatures were gone, but she knew better than to believe that meant safety. Earth had taught her that threats learn too. She sent a message to orbit. Short, clear. Recommend Council review Earth classification, she said. Deathworld rating insufficient. The Council did not reply immediately. They were too busy realizing the truth they had avoided. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because nothing that tried to break them ever succeeded. As the artificial night deepened, sensors began picking up signals from deep underground, older than the predators, older than the Council's presence. Something had been watching long before humans arrived, and it had just noticed them. Art. Such moments were called the calm before the storm. On Caraxes 9, the humans recognized it instantly. They tightened their perimeter and waited. So did the galaxy. The next morning did not bring relief. It brought proof. The ground under Caraxes 9 was alive with signals, not radio, not heat, patterns of vibration and electromagnetic noise that moved like thought. The Council's orbiting station captured it first, and for a moment there, analysts tried to label it as natural interference. Then it repeated, a sequence that matched no known language and no known storm cycle. A pulse that traveled across the planet's crust as if the world itself was sending a message. The alien technicians stared at the data until their eyes watered. Their hands shook. They were not trained for this kind of uncertainty. Council science had become a craft of fine adjustments, not raw discovery. Their civilization had not faced a true unknown in generations. Senior observer, older than most in the chamber, finally whispered what no one wanted to say. This is not a weak world. In the shelter below, the human commander listened to her own instruments. Human devices were simpler, rougher, built for field abuse. They did not translate the signals into comfort, translated them into warnings. Her people moved in controlled routines. Breakfast without talk. Gear check. Patrol assignments. One team to repair the outer fence. One team to monitor the burrow signs. One team to scan the horizon. They acted like this was normal. To them it was. On Earth, the environment had always been an enemy that never slept. You did not ask if the storm would come. You prepared as if it already had. The commander walked the perimeter herself. Light gravity made her body feel almost weightless, but she kept her steps measured. She had learned young that a body lied when it felt comfortable. Comfort could get you killed. A young human engineer crouched near the soil, running gloved fingers through dust. This is wrong, he said quietly. The commander knelt beside him. What's wrong? It's too easy to dig, he said. Not just because of gravity. The ground is layered like it's been turned. Something made tunnels before us, big ones. She looked at the scan results. The map showed hollow spaces beneath them, a web that extended far past their perimeter. It did not look like a natural cave system. It looked planned. Her jaw tightened. She did not show fear. She showed focus. Mark the zones, she said. No heavy equipment on those sections. Keep people spread out. If the ground gives, I want no chain reaction. The engineer swallowed. Yes, ma'am. In orbit, the council held another emergency session. This time, the chamber was not filled with laughter. It was filled with a quiet, brittle tension. Delegates from worlds that had never known famine or plague now spoke in clipped, urgent bursts. Caraxes 9 was a council symbol, a controlled frontier. If it was compromised, the council itself looked weak. A military representative from a soft-world civilization demanded immediate evacuation. Remove all personnel, the representative said. The risk is unacceptable. We will quarantine the planet and return when conditions are stable. A civilian delegate, voice shaking, asked the obvious follow-up. How do you stabilize a planet? No one answered. The Council's commander of orbital security, a being bred for calm and procedure, offered a different plan. Deploy containment drones, the commander said. Assess threats from a safe distance. If hostile life exists, we can neutralize it with precision. Neutralize. The word sounded clean in the chamber. It sounded naive to the humans. The human commander received the Council's suggestions as a delayed packet. Her face did not change as she read. Containment drones. Remote neutralization. Quarantine. Plans built by people who believed danger was a problem you could solve from far away. She sent a reply. Drones will fail in terrain that eats machinery, she wrote. Quarantine does not stop what is already here. Recommend support, not withdrawal. The Council did not like that response. It implied they needed humans. They had built their identity on not needing anyone. A younger species watching the broadcast from a distant habitat felt something shift inside them. They had grown up believing the Council were gods, perfect, gentle, untouchable. The Council looked uncertain. And the humans, those Deathworld outsiders, looked steady. On Caraxis 9, the first true fracture happened at midday. A patrol team found the remains of something half-buried near a ridge. Not bone, not metal. Smooth black material that resisted heat and tools. It was curved like a shell, but too symmetrical to be natural. The human commander stood over it, silent. Our team waited. One of the humans, a medic with tired eyes, spoke softly. This feels like a warning. Everything here is a warning, the commander said. They brought the piece back to camp and set it under scans. The readings were strange. It absorbed energy instead of reflecting it. It remained cold even under direct light. In orbit, the Council saw the scans and reacted with visible alarm. That material matched a restricted classification. It belonged to the architects. A civilization older than the Council, spoken of in fragments and cautionary tales. Not myth, not religion, but something close. The architects were known only through ruins found in dead systems. When the Council had tried to study those ruins, entire teams vanished. Ships lost power and never returned. Signals stopped mid-sentence. The Council had learned a lesson. Do not dig too deep. Now, a piece of that nightmare was sitting in a human camp. The Council's fear sharpened into something more personal. If the architects were involved, Council authority meant nothing. A civilian on a garden world watched the news feed and held their child closer. Their world had no storms, no predators, no hunger. Their greatest fear had been social shame. Now they were watching a Deathworld species stand on a planet that whispered with ancient threats, and they were still building fences. On the ground, a different kind of fear began to spread among the humans. Not panic, but the awareness that their usual rules might not apply. One human soldier, young and restless, spoke when the commander passed. We should leave, he said. The commander stopped, looked at him. Say it clearly. He swallowed. We are not supposed to be here. This is bigger than predators. Bigger than storms. Bigger than anything. We could die for nothing. The commander's eyes stayed steady. We can die on Earth for nothing too. A road accident, a sickness, a bad night. Death is never respectful. The difference is whether we choose what we stand for. The soldier looked away, ashamed. She softened her voice. I won't force anyone to stay for pride. But we do not run because something is unknown. That is how fear wins without fighting. That was Earth's harsh gift. Humans had learned to live with fear and still move forward. In orbit, an alien military officer watched that exchange and felt something twist in their chest. Their own soldiers had never spoken that way. Their soldiers were trained to obey because they trusted the Council's safety net. Humans obeyed because they trusted each other. That trust scared the officer more than any weapon. As the evening fell, the underground signals changed. The pulses became tighter, faster, like a heartbeat speeding up. The ground around the human camp began to vibrate faintly. Not enough to knock structures down, but enough that cups rippled and dust lifted in thin lines. The humans noticed immediately. They stopped talking. They listened. In the distance, the ridgeline split open, not in an explosion. In a slow, deliberate movement, as if a seam was being unzipped. Soil slid downward into a widening crack, revealing a dark shaft beneath. A breath of air rose from the opening. smelled wrong even through filters. Metallic and old, like a sealed room opened after centuries. The human commander felt her stomach tighten. Her people gathered without being told, keeping distance, weapons lowered but ready. They were not eager. They were careful. In orbit, the council station erupted into chaos. Technicians shouted. Delegates demanded orders. The word architects filled the chamber like smoke. The orbital commander finally gave a command that would have been unthinkable days ago. Contact the humans, the commander said. Ask them what they intend to do. Ask, not order. Ask. The transmission reached the human commander as she stared at the open shaft. The council's voice came through, strained and thin. Human-led, the envoy said. We advise immediate withdrawal from the site, as this world may contain classified structures. You are not authorized to engage. The human commander did not answer right away. She watched the dark opening. She watched the way the ground around it was too clean, too smooth, like it had been prepared. She watched how the vibration matched the pulses they had been seeing. Something was waking up. She turned her head slightly, speaking to her team. Set a secondary perimeter, she said. No one goes closer than 10 meters without a tether. All comes open. If anyone feels pressure in their head again, call it immediately. Then she spoke to the council. Who built it? She asked. The envoy hesitated. We believe it is connected to an ancient species, the architects. It is dangerous. The commander's voice stayed calm. Dangerous how? The envoy sounded almost offended. We do not know. The commander's eyes narrowed. Then you do not get to tell us what to do based on fear. Give me everything you have. All records, all scans, all incidents. There was silence on the line. The council was not used to being challenged. Then quietly the envoy said, we will transmit what we have. The humans received a thin archive of warnings and half-redacted reports. Most of it was superstition wrapped in formal language. Teams disappeared. Systems failed. Minds broke under unseen pressure. Survivors spoke of voices without sound. The human commander read it and felt no comfort. But she felt something else. Recognition. Earth had trained humans to face predators and storms. It had trained them to face hunger and gravity and pain. It had also trained them to face the worst predator of all, the mind. Humans carried trauma, fear, and darkness inside themselves, and still woke up every day to work, love, and build. Their resilience was not clean. It was scarred. It was real. The architects attacked minds. The council would break. Humans might not. That thought was not pride. It was calculation. Night fell fully. The shaft remained open, breathing cold air like a living thing. The pulses rose to a steady rhythm. The faint pressure returned at the edges of thought, like a hand testing a door. Some humans winced. Some rubbed their temples. The commander stood firm, feet planted in alien soil, staring into darkness that felt older than her species. Behind her, her people waited, silent and ready. Not because they thought they could win, but because they knew what it meant to be underestimated. In orbit, the council watched, terrified, as the humans did what no other species would. They stayed. And deep below the weak world, something answered their presence with a slow, deliberate awareness, as if it had finally found a creature that might understand it. The pressure did not strike all at once. Crept in, subtle and patient, like a tide testing the shore. Humans felt it first as a dull weight behind the eyes, a sense that thoughts were being watched rather than read. Some described it as standing alone in a dark room while something breathed just out of sight. On Earth, that feeling had a name: instinct. The commander ordered rotations shortened. No one stayed alone. Pairs moved together, back to back when possible. Hands stayed within reach of another human, a quiet acknowledgement that shared presence mattered. They had learned long ago that isolation was where fear grew sharpest. Alien observers noted this with confusion. Their own protocols emphasized individual safety pods and sealed mental barriers. Humans leaned toward each other instead. In orbit, a council psychologist watched biometric feeds and felt a tremor of disbelief. Stress markers were elevated, but cohesion was increasing. Heart rates synchronized during patrols, breathing patterns aligned. Humans were stabilizing themselves through proximity. They are grounding each other, the psychologist whispered. The concept felt primitive. It also worked. The shaft widened as the hours passed. Not violently, intentionally. Panels of dark material slid aside within the earth, revealing structure beneath. Geometry too precise to be geological. Angles that bent perception slightly, as if refusing to sit comfortably in the mind. The air grew colder. Gravity fluctuated in faint pulses, rising and falling by fractions that only human bodies seemed to notice immediately. Knees bent, muscles adjusted, balance recalibrated. Earth's gravity had never been kind. It had taught humans to feel changes in weight the way others felt temperature. A human scout knelt near the edge, tether secured, scanning downward. "Depth unknown," she said. "No visible bottom. Walls are smooth. No tool marks. Not built like we build," another human muttered. "No," the commander replied. "Built like it expected to last." The underground pulses synchronized with the human's presence, tightening into a rhythm that mirrored heartbeats. Faster when people moved closer. Slower when they stepped back. Something was listening. In the council chamber, fear finally broke through formality. A delegate from a water world began to shake uncontrollably, membranes fluttering as panic chemicals flooded their system. "This is madness," they cried. "We must destroy the site." "Collapse the planet if necessary," a military voice answered coldly. "We do not possess that capability." Silence followed. The council had forgotten what it meant to face something larger than itself. They turned again to the humans. The envoy's voice trembled as the transmission opened. "Human-led. We are detecting escalating neural fields. We believe the structure is attempting communication or domination. Do not know which." The commander closed her eyes briefly, not in fear, in thought. On Earth, humans had faced forces that could not be negotiated with. Earthquakes, hurricanes, disease. You did not ask them to stop. You learned how to survive their presence. "This thing is not attacking yet," she said. "It is testing, probing." "How can you be sure?" the envoy asked. "Because if it wanted us gone, we would already be gone." That answer chilled the chamber. On the ground, a human collapsed without warning, not from injury, but from overload. Two others caught him instantly, easing him down, speaking softly. He gasped, eyes wide. "It showed me something," he whispered. The commander knelt. "What did you see?" "A world," he said. "Burned, empty, not dead. Waiting." The medic injected stabilizers. The man's breathing slowed, but the fear remained etched into his expression. The council psychologist watched the exchange and felt something twist deep inside. Their species had long believed that seeing visions from unknown forces meant spiritual failure or contamination. Humans treated it as injury, something to stabilize and recover from. The difference mattered. As night deepened, the shaft emitted a low vibration that could be felt through bones. Tools rattled, teeth buzzed. Several humans clenched their jaws to keep steady. The commander ordered a controlled approach, not retreat, not advance. Observation from the edge, sensors lowered on tethers, humans anchoring each other physically. They did not rush. That restraint impressed the alien military observers more than any show of force. Humans were not fearless. They were disciplined. The first sensor returned images that made the council gasp. Below the surface lay a vast chamber, carved from the planet itself. Not hollowed, but reshaped. Walls flowed like frozen liquid, covered in patterns that shifted when observed. At the center stood a structure like a pillar and a seed combined, pulsing with internal light that was not light at all. The signal source, the architect presence. The council archives had never shown anything intact. A whisper brushed across the human line. "It's not words. Meaning. Welcome." Several humans staggered. One cried out in anger. Another laughed once, sharp and humorless. The commander felt it too. The sense of being measured, weighed, compared. She had felt this on Earth as well. Standing before wildfires that moved faster than thought, before oceans that swallowed ships without apology. The universe did not care who you were. It only cared what you could endure. "You are small," the presence conveyed. "You are loud. You break yourselves." The commander spoke aloud, knowing the words were as much for her people as for whatever listened. "Yes," she said, "we do." The presence paused, Alien observers leaned forward, breath held. The humans did not kneel. They did not threaten. They did not beg. They acknowledged truth. That acknowledgement seemed to confuse the presence more than defiance ever could. You survive where others dissolve, it pressed. Why? The commander swallowed. This was not diplomacy. This was exposure. Because we have no choice, she said. Because our world never gave us mercy. Because stopping meant dying. Images flashed through the human line. Ice choking crops, cities flattened by storms, children carried through floodwaters, hospitals overflowing, fires on hillsides, graves dug too fast. The presence recoiled slightly. The council psychologist gasped. Neural readouts spiked, not in humans, but in the structures field. The architect construct was reacting. It had not expected memory. Most species suppressed trauma. Humans carried it. You bring damage with you, the presence warned. The commander did not deny it. We bring scars, she said. We bring stories of failure. But we also bring repair. The human camp lights flickered as power fluctuated. Engineers compensated instantly, rerouting, reinforcing, swearing softly, but smiling grimly. This, too, was Earth's lesson. Nothing worked forever. You fixed it anyway. In orbit, a council civilian watched the feed and wept quietly. Their entire life had been built on safety guarantees. Watching humans stand exposed before an ancient force, steady, despite fear, broke something inside them. They realized safety had been borrowed, not earned. The presence shifted again. The pulses slowed. You are not conquerors, it conveyed. Yet you expand. We look for places to live, the commander replied. We do not look for places to own. That was not entirely true. Humans had conquered plenty. But they had also learned the cost. The architect's structure extended tendrils of energy along the chamber walls. The ground beneath the humans trembled harder now. Cracks formed at the edges of the perimeter. The commander raised her hand. Humans fell back in perfect coordination, spacing adjusted, weight redistributed. No panic, no shouting. Alien commanders stared in disbelief. Their own forces would have broken under this pressure. They relied on systems and commands. Humans relied on each other. The council envoy finally spoke, voice hoarse. Human-led. If this escalates further, we cannot assist. We do not know how. The commander looked up at the stars briefly. Somewhere beyond them was Earth. Heavy, violent, beautiful Earth. We never expected assistance, she said, but we will need honesty. If this thing turns hostile to the galaxy, you must tell us everything you have. No omissions. The envoy hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. That agreement changed everything. For the first time, the council was not in control. The presence in the shaft pulsed, once, sharply. Several humans cried out. Blood trickled from one nose. Another clenched their fists so hard, skin broke. The commander remained upright. The presence pressed harder, probing for collapse. It did not find it. Instead, it found stubbornness shaped by gravity, hunger, and loss. It found a species that did not shatter when pushed but leaned back. Deep in the chamber, the architect constructs brightened, energy climbing toward a threshold the council instruments could barely measure. On the surface, the human commander planted her boots wider, feeling the planet strain beneath her, knew this moment. Earth had taught it to her in every disaster. The moment just before everything broke or changed. In orbit, the council watched, hearts racing, as the humans stood on the edge of something ancient and vast, not with arrogance, but with a quiet readiness that spoke of a lifetime spent facing impossible odds. Fear filled the chamber. So did awe, because the galaxy was beginning to understand that Deathworld species were not born to destroy. They were born to survive what others could not. Whatever was waking beneath Caraxes 9 was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The pressure peaked like a wave about to break, then stopped. Not eased, not withdrawn. Held. Every human felt it lock into place. A force balanced on the edge of action. Muscles trembled, teeth clenched. Breath came shallow but controlled. No one ran, no one screamed. The architect presence hovered at that threshold, vast and ancient, touching human minds with something close to curiosity. You endure, it conveyed. But endurance alone does not grant passage. The commander tasted blood where she had bitten her tongue. She kept her voice steady. "We are not asking for passage," she said. "We are asking to coexist. This world is not empty. It never was, but neither are we." Images surged again, stronger this time. The presence did not filter them. It saw Earth clearly now. Not just disasters, but the aftermath. Hands digging through rubble, strangers pulling strangers from fire, parents shielding children with their own bodies, doctors working without sleep, farmers planting again in burned soil, cities rebuilt where the ground had split, saw humans fail again and still refused to stop. The architect presence recoiled, not in fear, but in something unfamiliar, understanding. "You were shaped by constant threat," it conveyed slowly. "Your kind was refined by harm." "Yes," the commander said. "And we paid for it. We still do." The presence paused longer this time. The pulses beneath the ground slowed further, sinking not to heartbeats now, but to breathing. "You do not seek dominion," it said. "Yet your survival alters every system you enter." "That's true," she replied. "We change places, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. We are still learning the difference." The architect's structure brightened once more, then dimmed, energy flowing inward instead of outward. The pressure lifted enough that humans could straighten, though no one relaxed. In orbit, Council sensors registered the shift. Power levels dropped, neural fields stabilized. Panic rippled through the chamber, then stalled as the data confirmed what no one had dared hope. The threat was receding. A council delegate collapsed into their seat, breathing raggedly. Another began to cry openly. The military commander stared at the display in stunned silence. On the surface, the shaft's edges smoothed, sealing partially, not closing but settling into a dormant state. The ground stopped vibrating. The air warmed by a fraction. The architect presence spoke one final time, its tone altered. "We withdrew from the galaxy long ago," it conveyed. Other minds broke under proximity. Yours bends, but does not fracture. The commander felt the weight of that statement settle into her bones. "I did not mean to wake you," she said. "You did not," the presence replied. "You reminded us." Then it faded, not vanished, not destroyed. Sleeping. Silence fell over Caraxis 9, deep and complete. Humans exhaled as one. Some sat down hard, some laughed shakily. One person wiped their face and said nothing. No cheers followed. Survival did not require celebration. It required acknowledgement. The commander lowered her hands slowly. Her arms felt heavy now that the pressure was gone. "Medical check," she ordered. "Everyone, no exceptions." They obeyed without question. In orbit, the council finally found its voice. "Human-led," the envoy said, voice unsteady. "The readings indicate the structure has entered a stable, dormant state. We believe the immediate danger has passed." The commander looked at the sealed shaft, then at her people. "Danger doesn't pass," she said. "It waits. But this is good enough for now." The envoy swallowed. "You prevented a catastrophe. The council owes you a debt." "That's new," she replied calmly. "It is," the envoy admitted. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed. Council classifications were rewritten. Deathworld was no longer a warning label. It became a category of respect. Earth was reclassified not as a failed world, but as an extreme adaptation environment. Caraxis 9 was removed from demonstration status, became a protected system, with human oversight invited rather than tolerated. Council scientists worked alongside human engineers to study the architect structure from a distance, carefully, honestly. No more omissions, no more arrogance. They learned quickly that humans asked different questions, not how to control, but how to live nearby without provoking disaster. Alien civilians watched human interviews and struggled to reconcile what they saw. These were not conquerors boasting of victory. These were tired people talking about repairs, medical recovery, and lessons learned. One human said it simply. "We didn't win," she said. "We survived. It's different." Fear of humans spread, but it was no longer shallow fear. It was layered with respect. Alien commanders began requesting human advisors for frontier missions. Not because humans were strongest, but because they knew how to function when plans failed. A young alien officer summed it up in a private report. They do not assume safety, the officer wrote. They build for loss and hope anyway. On Earth, news of Caraxus 9 reached the public slowly. Most humans listened, nodded, and went back to their lives. Survival stories were not rare to them. But among disaster responders, soldiers, doctors, and engineers, something quiet passed between them. Recognition. They had been training for the galaxy without knowing it. The human commander stood one last time at the edge of the sealed shaft before departure. She placed a gloved hand on the ground, feeling the faintest echo of something vast beneath. "We'll be back," she said softly. "But we won't forget this place." The ground did not answer. That was fine. Some things did not need to. As the human ships lifted from Caraxus 9, Council vessels held position, giving them space without being asked. Alien crews watched the humans go with expressions that mixed awe and unease. They understood now. Humans were not frightening because they were aggressive. They were frightening because they were adaptable beyond expectation. They could walk into nightmares and make room for themselves without needing to dominate. They carried their Deathworld inside them, not as a weapon, but as a teacher. The council chamber held one final session on the matter. The oldest member spoke last. "We believed comfort was the highest achievement," the elder said. "We believed safety defined civilization. We were wrong." The elder looked at the display showing Earth, heavy and alive. "Civilization is defined by what endures when comfort is stripped away." The vote passed unanimously. Humans were granted full council recognition, not as a curiosity, not as a danger to be contained, but as equals whose perspective was necessary for survival beyond safe stars. The galaxy slept easier and more uneasily all at once, because now it knew. Somewhere out there lived a species born under crushing gravity, hunted by its own world, forged by loss, shaped by resilience, a species that did not seek to rule the galaxy, only to survive it. And that, more than any weapon or fleet, was why the galaxy would never mock Earth again.